67. Page 67, first, second, and last. Years I spent in vanity and pride, caring not my Lord was crucified, knowing not it was for me he died on Calvary. Mercy there was great and grace was free, pardon there was multiplied to me. There my burden so found liberty at Calvary. By God's word at last my sin I learned, then I trembled at the law I'd spurned, till my guilty soul imploring turned to Calvary. Mercy there was great and grace was free, pardon there was multiplied to me. There my burden so found liberty at Calvary. Oh, the love that drew salvation's plan. Oh, the grace that brought it down to man. Oh, the mighty gulf that God did span at Calvary. Mercy there was great and grace was free, pardon there was multiplied to me. There my burden so found liberty at Calvary. How many birthdays this week? Yep. I think we've got everybody here for the month. And anniversaries? Yeah, birthdays. Everybody. Let's see. Oh, 167. Oh, I want to see him. 167. As I journey through this land, singing as I go, pointing souls to Calvary, to the crimson flow. Many arrows pierce my soul from without within, but my Lord leads me on, through him I must win. Oh, I want to see him, look upon his face, there to sing forever of his saving grace. On the streets of glory, let me lift my voice, cares all past, home at last, ever to rejoice. When in service for my Lord, dark may be the night, but I'll cling more close to him, he will give me light. Satan's snares may vex my soul, turn my thoughts aside, but my Lord goes ahead, leads where'er betide. Oh, I want to see him, look upon his face, there to sing forever of his saving grace. On the streets of glory, let me lift my voice, cares all past, home at last, to rejoice. When before me billows rise from the mighty deep, then my Lord directs my bark, he to safely keep, and he leads me gently on through this world below. He's a real friend to me, oh, I love him so. Oh, I want to see him, look upon his face, there to sing forever of his saving grace. On the streets of glory, let me lift my voice, cares all past, home at last, ever to rejoice.
All right, good evening, everybody. Last Sunday night service of 2024. You believe it? 2025. Anybody ever think we'd get to this far? I mean, we thought, even the Apostle Paul thought he was going to rapture out in his lifetime, and here it is, 2,000 plus years since he's been gone, and we're still waiting. But I'm looking forward to that day when we don't have to worry about any stuff anymore, right? So I'm looking forward to that. So glad that you're here the last Sunday night, 2024. Don't forget Tuesday, it's coming Tuesday night starting at 8. It'll be our watch night service. So we'll have a service and then go in the fellowship hall and eat. So we got chicken legs and chicken tenders to go along with that. So the chicken legs will be baked and the chicken tenders will be breaded. And so looking forward to all of that. And then bring your board games. you'll play games till a little bit before midnight, and we'll come in and pray the 2025. And that's for those that can make it that far. So if you're an early owl and go to bed at 8, well, you probably won't even be here. And so, but those of us that'll brave the rest of it, and we'll be here and we'll pray in 2025 whether you're here or not.
You're going to play games.
No.
See, that's what I'm wondering.
Did you not hear me saying you can play games? That's what. Roll the tape back. Yeah, I'll fellowship. I'll talk and all that stuff, drink coffee. But I'm a party pooper when it comes to playing games. So the only board game I like to play is Pit. And nobody knows how to play Pit. And so I have to kind of read up on that and see what that is. So anyway, I'm sure everybody will have a good time.
Randy will bring Mr. Wiggly for you.
The what?
Randy will bring Mr. Wiggly for you.
Mr. Wiggly. I don't know what that is, but I'm not. Okay, Saturday morning the 11th, men's prayer breakfast here at the church, starting at 8:30, and then 27th, the ladies' meeting, 2025 at 5:30. So looking forward to that. Please check the music. Please check the music schedule, and when you're slated to sing, please make sure that you're ready to sing. Ushers, make your way toward the front. Just oblivious. Did you pray this morning? I think you did this morning. All right, Justin, you pray.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Please bless the audience. Please bless the message this evening. In Jesus' name, amen.
So what is Mr. Wiggly?
I'll have to bring it. I won't sing it on midnight, but I can sing it for one game. My grandma had it when I was a kid. That's what I grew up. So when I found one a few years back, I bought it. It's now paper deals instead of plastic, Oh, I don't think I have to mention this, but don't bring your Ouija board. If you have- So, Pastor Mike could play that one.
He's still around.
You just put your, yeah. So
Remember, we're on live stream.
there's a song about the deck of cards. You should listen to that. You remember that one, don't you? Oh,
Oh, no, we're in the hole.
yeah. I'll have to.
Somebody just told me
We'll
about
have to bring that one up. I mean,
it.
it's.
Wayne told me about that.
All right, let's see. We got special after this next song. Turn to page 89. 89. First, second, last. Face to face with Christ, my Savior. Face to face, what will it be? When with rapture I behold Him, Jesus Christ who died for me. Face to face I shall behold Him, far beyond the starry skies. Face to face in all His glory, I shall see Him by and by. Only faintly now I see Him, with the darkling veil between. But a blessed day is coming, when His glory shall be seen. Face to face I shall behold Him, far beyond the starry skies. Face to face in all His glory, I shall see Him by and by. Face to face, oh blissful moment, face to see and know. Face to face with my Redeemer, Jesus Christ who loves me so. Face to face I shall behold Him, far beyond the starry skies. Face to face in all His glory, I shall see Him by
As long as I can see.
It's a do-over.
You want to come up and join us on this, Tabby? Do you know this song?
I don't know, what is it? Same one we sang this morning?
Mary called him Jesus, but I call him Lord.
I heard it the first time this morning.
You heard it for the first time this morning. We played it for the first time this morning.
Master, Redeemer, Savior of the world, wonderful Counselor, bright morning star, lily of the valley, provider and friend. He was yesterday, he'll be tomorrow, beginning and end. But the angel called him Jesus, born of a virgin. Mary called him Jesus, but I call him Lord.
Jehovah, Messiah, mighty God and King, bread of life, lasting word of love that I sing. Light in darkness, door to heaven, my home in the sky, the fountain of living water that never shall run dry.
But the angel called him Jesus, born of a virgin. Mary called him Jesus, but I call him Lord. Mary called him Jesus, but I call him Lord.
Ecclesiastes chapter 4. We're moving right along through this book, aren't we? Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Boy, you look so happy tonight. I don't know why you look so happy tonight, but you look so happy tonight. I'm glad you're here. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. And again, I just want to reiterate that the book of Ecclesiastes was written from a human philosophical point of view, and that's a life without God. And I'll just tell you that it's a life of emptiness. When we try to live our life apart from God and what He wants us to do, it can be an empty life. It can just be a life that doesn't have any meaning at all. Noah Webster gave this definition to philosophy. It's just literally the love of wisdom. But in modern acceptation, philosophy is a general term denoting an explanation of the reason of things, or an investigation of the causes of all phenomena, both of mind and of matter. So it doesn't have anything to do with God. It has everything to do with us and how we define things. And you know that words, after a while, can change their meaning. Man can change the definition of a word just on a whim. If they just feel like it's time to change definition, they can do that. And then man has also gotten to the point to where he can change what God said. And that's where we get into dangerous territory when we do that. So there were 9 experiments that Solomon brings out in our study, and of course we've only gotten to the 6th one on that. The 10th one, he pretty much gives an explanation of all of them put together, and he puts God back in it. So we started last week on egotism, and egotism is defined primarily as the practice of too frequently using the word I. So when it comes to me, myself, and I, that's the 3 amigos that we could talk about as far as when we come to our ego, and sometimes our ego can really mess things up, especially when somebody talks about our ego, or they call us out about our ego, and that makes us mad because we just feel like everything should be the way that it is. So we started this on egotism last week, and we want to conclude that tonight. So if you look at chapter 3, let's start reading in verse number 16. We'll just kind of go over. He says, "Moreover, I saw under the sun the place of judgment, that wickedness was there, and the place of righteousness, that iniquity was there. And I said in my heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time there for every purpose and for every work. I said in mine heart concerning the estate of the sons of men, that God might manifest them, and that they might see that they themselves are beasts. For that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts, even one thing befalleth them, as the one dieth, so dieth the other. Yea, they all have one breath, so that a man hath no preeminence above a beast, for all is vanity. And all go into one place, all are of dust, and all turn to dust again. Who knoweth the spirit of man that goeth upward, and the spirit of beast that goeth downward to the earth? Wherefore I perceive that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his portion, for who shall bring him to see what shall be after him?" And so we start a new chapter, and Lord willing, I think we're going to get all 16 verses tonight, so we can move on to chapter number 5, and we get on to a new experiment that Solomon does. But tonight he continues on with being an egotist. So notice chapter 4 here in verse number 1. And Solomon says, "So I returned and considered all the oppressions that are done under the sun, and behold, the tears of such as were oppressed, and they had no comforter. And on the side of their oppressors there was power, but they had no comforter." So I thought that was pretty interesting. Kind of sums up what is transpiring here in this country as well, with those that are high up in authority. They have all the money, they have all the resources, where if you try to take somebody to court, we as peons try to take somebody to court, then whatever company that is or government agency it is, they have all taxpayer funds, they have all the money that they need where we don't. And I think Solomon's kind of looking at that in verse number 1, where he says, "I beheld the tears of such as were oppressed, and they had no comforter. On the side of the oppressors there was power, but they had no comforter." So it kind of goes both ways. Now, I remember talking to Brother Randy the other day about unions. And I told him that the company that my brother worked for is a place called Wayne Works. And Wayne Works, kind of like Bluebird, they used to build school buses. And they were really good. They were good quality school buses, and they were unionized. The plant was union, and so all of these bigwigs from the union came in, and they kind of stirred up the people and said, "Well, you need to fight for better wages, better." And I'm not against that. I think that's wonderful, but there's an issue with that, and I'll get to that here in a second if I remember to get back to it. And so the union came in. They had all the resources that they needed, and they worked up all the people to go on strike, because they didn't get what the union said they should get. And Wayne Works at that time was not a very wealthy company, and they were kind of struggling in that sense. And so the company just told the union people, "Look, if you strike, I'll just close." The owner said, I'll just close the company, because I can't afford to do any more. I'm giving you as much as I can possibly give you. And so the union people worked up all of the workers at Wayne Works and got them to go on strike. Guess what the owner did? He locked up the place and sold the business, and that was it. And so the union executives that came in and stirred up all the people, they left. They just left town and left all of these 1,000 workers out of work. So now what are we going to do? Well, the union execs didn't care because they did their job. They did their responsibility. So they've moved on to the next place. They've still got their jobs. And then all of the people that lost their jobs began to realize, hey, this is not what we signed up for. And so, yes, these are things that we wanted, but we didn't think the company was serious that it was going to close down. Well, when the owner says, look, if you strike, I'm going to close the doors, then you better understand something, that's how things work. And so when you go to work for somebody and they tell you this is how much you're going to get and you accept that job, work at that pace. Work for that amount that you were told. Don't go in there and start demanding things that really are not your decision to demand. And so if you don't like the work situations in a place like that, wherever you work, just go find another job. And so here they were relying on these other people that had all the resources and had all of the money. And so they went on to the next town where kind of verse 1 talks about all those people that lost their jobs. Now they're out of work. And so Solomon is kind of seeing that, yes, Solomon says, I can see both sides. I can see the workers that have lost their job, and I can see the union that have lost their job. And the regular working people, they don't have enough money to go sue the union because the union's got all the resources. They've got all the money from the union dues that they get. And so you just kind of see this kind of situation here in verse number 1. And that's just the egotism of the union at that particular time. Hey, we're going to shut you down if you don't do what we tell you to do. And they don't have a right to tell the owner what to do. That's just kind of the amazing thing to me. So 1,000 of them are left without jobs. And oppressors like that, they have the tons of lawyers and tons of money to quash the oppressed. And this is kind of what Solomon is saying. And then he goes on to say this in verse number 2 and verse number 3. He says, wherefore I praised the dead, which are already dead, more than the living, which are yet alive. Yea, better is he than both they which have not been yet, who hath not seen the evil work that is done under the sun. Have you ever heard, and I've heard people say, I just wish I were dead. Then I wouldn't have to deal with all of this. And I mean, we've listened to Elijah do the same. Lord, just kill me. Jonah, the same thing. Lord, just kill me. Just go ahead and take me home. And this is kind of what he's saying. But Solomon says, well, I'm glad the people that are dead, they don't have to go through this. It's kind of what he's saying. And it's better off, the second part of that, he says it's better for those that have not been born yet because they're not experiencing. You know who I feel bad for? I feel bad for the generation that's being born today. Those young people. And even my grandkids that have to grow up in this mess. I mean, I've seen a lot, and I'm sure some of you have seen a lot worse than I have. But please don't get the idea that Donald Trump's going to turn everything around because there's still evil in this world. And as long as there's evil in this world, they're just going to try to disrupt everything that they do. So really, instead of going out and just finding a better job, the egotists will blame everything and everyone else for their oppression. That's what he's saying here. Verse 4. Solomon says again, I considered all travail and every right work, that for this a man is envied of his neighbor. This is also vanity and vexation of spirit. I think what he's saying here is, well, what about the guy that's trying to do the right thing, that's trying to work hard and trying to make something for himself? Well, Solomon says when you look at it from that way, that also is a waste of time. I call this a horrible pessimistic view of life. Is this all that you can get? I mean, you see the oppressors, you see what they do, and they're in tears, and then you see the ones that are oppressing them, and they seem to be getting away with everything. And then Solomon says, well, I'm very glad for those that have died that they don't have to deal with this. I also think it's good for those that are born and haven't been through this. And then he kind of says, but what about the guy across the street that's minding his own business and trying to make a life for himself and try to better himself? What about him? And Solomon says, even that's just vanity. Even that's all just bubbles. And then notice what he says here in verse number 5. He says, the fool foldeth his hands together and eateth his own flesh. So is Solomon saying that foolish people are cannibals? No, that's not what he's talking about here at all. It just means that he's not willing to work for himself. This is a typical egotist. Somebody that thinks, hey, I don't need to work. I deserve everything that I can get. And there are people out there that get stuff for doing absolutely nothing. And Solomon calls him a fool. The fool folded his hands together. I'm not going to do anything. Remember the story of the just steward, where the steward goes out and he hires some people in his vineyard to work all day for a penny. And he goes at the next hour and he hires more people, and some go into the fields and some don't. And some he hired at the 11th hour for 1 penny. And at the end of the day, he told the treasurer, go give everybody their wages. And so he gave a penny to those that only worked just a short amount of time. And the ones that were toiled all day in the sun, that agreed to work for a penny, and they thought they should get more, and then they got a penny and they were mad. But they're the ones that said, yes, I'll go into the field and work. I'll do that. But then it got to the point, well, no, that's not really what I signed up for. You're not paying me enough. Well, go find something else that'll pay a little more instead of and then the owner of the vineyard said, don't I have the right to give you what I said I was going to pay you? It's my money anyway. And here's the thing, it's not the government's money. And don't you just love it when the government says, well, we have all these entitlements? No, it's not. It's taxpayer funded. Everything is taxpayer funded. And then they call themselves public servants. I'd like to know how a public servant can work 4 years in Congress and become a millionaire. Something doesn't compute up here with that. But the fool foldeth his hands together and eateth his own flesh. Notice verse 6, he says, better is a handful with quietness than both the hands full with travail and vexation of spirit. You know that first part of verse 6? Better is a handful with quiet. I'll take that any day. Yeah. Better is a handful. Absolutely. Better is a handful than both hands full with travail and vexation. Absolutely. David Guzik said this. He said, it's better to have less and be content with quietness than to have more and constantly be grasping for further success. Now, I don't know whether anybody in here knows a guy that started off really, he worked for Woolworth actually when he first started, then kind of split off and started his own company. It started out, it was called Walton 5 and Dime. Anybody remember when it was Walton 5 and Dime? And the guy's name was Sam Walton. And Sam Walton built an empire. And I read his autobiography, and then I also read his authorized biography and an unauthorized biography. And you'd be amazed at how much difference there is between the authorized biography and the unauthorized. I mean, the guy that wrote the book Unauthorized took a lot of liberty to say stuff about Sam Walton that wasn't true. But if you want to know somebody, read their autobiography. It's a book that they wrote. And he started out basically early on, saved a lot of business. He saved a lot of companies. He's the one that said, we're just going to buy American. We're not going to buy Chinese. We're not going to buy Taiwan. We're not going to buy just stuff made in America. What he would do, is a genius at this. He was his own pilot. He'd fly around the different communities. He'd find out that a business was getting ready to shutter its doors, and he would go in and he would sign contracts with the people. Said, look, we want you to build, just like in Carthage, Missouri, the big old coveralls. And he basically went in and he said, I'll buy $5 million at these, but I'll buy them at this fraction of the cost. And so he was able to sell everything at 30% markup. Was a genius as well. And he took 10% here, 10% here, 10% there. But he kept a lot of businesses from closing. But later on, he closed a lot of businesses too because of what he's doing. He put a lot of mom and pop shops out of business. But I remember he drove, and I think it was a 64, 67 Chevy, I can't remember, old ratty pickup truck. Drove that through Bentonville, had a place to go, drink coffee with his buddies every morning. The richest man in the world. Doesn't have a bodyguard, doesn't have anything like that. He's just driving around. And so his wife bought a new car. And Sam comes home and says, no, you're not doing, you're going to take it back. We're going to buy used. Well, the reason why, when he died, each of his kids got $3.5 billion. $3.5 billion. That's what his kids got when he died. But anyway, he just never, and all of the top executives never drove a BMW or anything like that. But the day after he died, the parking lot was filled with BMWs and Jaguars and all these other things. But this is kind of what, this was Sam Walton's philosophy. And his wife one day asked him, are you not satisfied with the number of stores that you've got? At that time, I think it was 300 and some stores that he had. Are you not satisfied with the number of stores that you have? And this is Sam's philosophy. Just one more. And he'd get that one done. And his wife would say, are you done? No, just one more. And so here's a man. And I got to meet him. I personally got to meet him one time. And he asked me if I like to hunt fish. I said, yeah. He said, next time I'm in Springfield, I'll take you fishing. And that never came to fruition. But anyway, just kind of one of those, just one more. And so I just kind of think about it. The same thing here that he said, just like, David got, it's better to have less and be content with quietness and to have more and constantly be grasping for further success. And that was what Sam's philosophy, just one more and just one more. And he never had an opportunity to rest. And then he retired from the store and they put another CEO in and they were kind of ruining things. And Sam came back, took the store over. And it's just kind of like that. But, for the life of me, I don't understand why people love to live in big cities. I mean, the hustle and the bustle, and you have to take the subway to different places now. You don't know if you're going to get set on fire in a subway or shot or watch somebody strangle somebody else. I just don't understand why people love to live in that. I just, the more and more I get to think, I just love that little quietness of my little neck of the woods out there in Monroe. And you don't have to worry about stuff. I mean, it's quiet out there, and I think he is absolutely right. It says, better's an handful with quietness than both hands full with travail and vexation of spirit. So it just kind of seems like Solomon, just for a second, looked away from the stresses of life, but then he comes back to reality. He's looking at all of this. And here's a guy that money was no object. Wouldn't that be fun, just for a little bit? If money was no object, and you could buy whatever you wanted, but the sad thing is you'd buy that and then you want something more. You want something more, you want something more and something more. And here's the problem with young people when they get married. Listen up. You're not going to have everything in your home that your mom and dad has. They had to work for that. And don't have the philosophy of, well, charge! I'll just charge it. Because once you get over a certain amount of debt, credit card debt, you'll never get it paid off. And that's what they do. That's what they figured out. So young people just understand, when you get married, you may have cardboard furniture for a while. But that's okay, because you just build up to that to have everything that your parents have. So just understand that. And that was free. Now verse 7. Solomon says, then I returned. And I saw vanity under the sun. Now, here again, when he uses the term vanity under the sun, he's talking about the life that he is living without any thought of God or eternity. And it is so true. When you look at life apart from God, when you look under the sun, when you're not thinking about eternity, when you're not thinking about anything, you're not thinking about dying, you're just thinking about, everything I'm looking at is just kind of vanity. It's almost like you can hear Solomon cry out, there's no use to any of it. I mean, what you buy is not going to last. You remember in the days when you'd buy a refrigerator, and some refrigerators are 20, 30 years old, and man, they're going to live throughout eternity. They'll just keep going, and then this new stuff that you buy is throwaway. You can't fix it. And so Solomon kind of looks at all that, and he's, everything that I've got is just is just vanity. And I think that's the worst kind of pessimism that you could live at. And so you have to know and think, well, that's the reason why suicide is so high today. Because people live without God. And they don't think about eternity, or else if they knew that there was a possibility of them going to hell, why would you commit suicide and, well, I'm just going to take a chance? No, they don't even think about eternity. They don't. They feel like life is just useless. And they can never get out of the rut that they are in. And I'm going to make a statement, and I want you to understand where I'm coming from in my statement. Don't get mad at me. But when you look at suicide in and of itself, would that not be the most selfish thing that a person can do? Is that not ego at its finest? Well, why is that? Well, they don't think about who it's going to hurt. They think that, well, if I just end my life, that ends life. Oh, no. That's the beginning of eternity in either heaven or hell. And then I've heard Baptists say, well, people that commit suicide go to hell even if they're saved. You'll never find that one place in the Word of God. Now, true, they are taking things into their own hands because they commit suicide if they kill themselves. That's not God's plan for anybody. That's just an egotist thinking, well, things are not going to get any better. I'm just in a rut. I'm never going to get out of this. So they don't think about who it's going to hurt, and they just don't feel like there's no hope. And sure enough, without God, there is no hope. But every person who is committing suicide is thinking that that's going to bring them peace when they wake up in the godless hell. And I guarantee you that everyone who's in hell that committed suicide will be thinking of that for the rest of eternity. Because their memory never goes away. If I only would have, but that's too late. Let's move on, verse 8. Solomon says, there is one alone, and there is not a second. Yea, he hath neither child nor brother. Yet is there no end of all his labor? Neither is his eye satisfied with riches. Neither saith he, for whom do I labor, and bereave my soul of good? This is also vanity, yea, it's a sore travail. Now, I think that verse has to be one of the most depressing verses in the Bible. Why? It just doesn't matter what you do, Solomon said, or who you do it for. The successes that you have, in the end, really, it's worse than vanity. It's just a sore travail. It's not worth doing anything. It's not worth doing anything nice or right. Because what reward are you going to get out of this? Well, for one, I'm thankful for God's salvation. I'm thankful for God's forgiveness because I've got something to look forward to. I've got heaven to look forward to. Well, okay, so if you know you're going to heaven and you don't know when that is going to be, and your life is so full of stress, and why not just end your life? Who knows what God could have used you for? But there again, when a person just thinks of their self, that's it. I'm thankful for salvation. Yes, I'm looking forward to the day that Jesus Christ sounds a trumpet and I get to go live with Him forever, but I'm enjoying life right now. I'm having a ball doing the things that I'm doing. I'm glad for my salvation, and God gives me joy, and I don't think life could be any better than what God has given me. Oh yeah, I'm looking forward. I hurt more and more every day, but I'm just thankful for the joy that God gives me, and I don't think I'm alone. I think there's other people that love to fellowship with other of God's people. I have a ball. I have a ball with people. I think there's one person in this room, especially, they're not here tonight, but I have a blast giving her a hard time. But she just gives it right back. And that's just a blessing. I mean, Miss Connie, I gave her a real hard time this morning, and she just laughs about it. And I think that's great. I think we can have a ball doing stuff like that. And I don't like when people do stuff to me. Now notice verse number 9. 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him that's alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. You know what? Friends are a blessing. Especially the friend that sticketh closer than a brother. Talking about Jesus Christ, he's sticketh closer to a brother. But 2 are better than 1. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him that is alone when he falleth. I feel bad for those that don't have any friends, that don't want to have any fellowship, don't want to have a good time. I do. But he continues on with this, verse 11. It says, again, if 2 lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? No truer words of wisdom were ever spoken. I enjoy being with Kathy. I enjoy when she goes with me everywhere that she can go. She doesn't like it as much because there's stuff at home she could be doing, and I drag her along with me. Just like Thursday or Friday here at the church. I'm not going to be there all day. We're here till 4 o'clock. Again, if 2 lie together, then they have heat. That's just a true statement. It's just a fact of nature. Verse 12, for if one prevail against him, 2 shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not easily broken. Now, some of you know what television show I'm talking about, and I'm sure maybe the majority of you do not. But anybody in here remember the television show Bonanza? Remember the theme song? Dun, 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 dun. Anybody know the words to that song? There's one part of that kind of says, if any one of you fight any one of us, he's got to fight with me. That's part of the song. You got a right to pick a little fight bonanza. If any one of you fight any one of us, he's got to fight with me. 144, 441. This we guarantee. I just dated myself, didn't I? But I love what he said at the end of this verse. A threefold cord is not easily broken. And that is a wonderful example of a husband and wife where there's 3 points to the marriage. There's a husband, or there's God, there's a husband, and there's a wife. So just imagine a triangle. I was going to have you put that up on the screen, Josh, and I just completely forgot about it. But just imagine this triangle. And put God at the top, and put the husband here and the wife here. So the closer to God they get, what happens to their relationship? The closer they get. So that's a threefold cord is not easily broken. And how you can have a great relationship with your spouse is just be close to God. And pray that your spouse is close to God too, because you may be far apart at some times, but the closer you get to God, the closer you get to each other. And I love what the Scripture says here. A threefold cord is not easily broken. Verse 13. He says, better is a poor and a wise child than an old and foolish king who will no more be admonished. Now he gets back down to the brass tacks here. Gets down to the rubber meets the road. He's talking about himself. He's talking about himself here. Better is a poor and a wise child than an old and foolish king who will no more be admonished. How would you like to say those words? I can't be corrected anymore. Well, if you think about it, he's got 700 wives and 300 concubines. They've already stolen his heart away to serve false gods. He knows that, but he doesn't have any desire to get out. Not only would I call that, my mind just left, grieving the Spirit. Not only is it grieving the Spirit, but I think what Solomon said here is I've quenched the Spirit, where I can't be admonished anymore. And this is kind of what he's talking about. Better is a poor and wise child than an old and foolish king who will no more be admonished. For out of prison, verse 14, he cometh to reign, whereas also he that is born in his kingdom becometh poor. He's speaking of himself here. Remember, he was the second son of Bathsheba. Anybody remember what her and David, remember what happened to the first child that they had together? He died. And so he's talking about the second son of Bathsheba. He was the one. And then Solomon obviously is born into royalty. He was born into wealth, but there was no end of the men that could take over the kingdom after David but Solomon. As a matter of fact, if you remember Adonijah, when David was still living, Adonijah was able to take Joab and Abiathar the priests, and he blew the trumpet, and he was having a feast, and everybody was saying, God save King Adonijah, and David knew nothing about it. And David said, well, Solomon is going to be, the next king. And Solomon doesn't know about any of this stuff taking place until Nathan comes in and talks to Bathsheba. Hey, did you know that Adonijah has already called himself to be king? And does David know? No, David doesn't know anything about it. Well, you better call all of these other people and come in and anoint Solomon king, and that's what he did. And so Solomon understands and realizes that, hey, it could have been anybody else. But I'm glad that God chose me. Now, let's wrap it up, verse 15 and 16. He said, I considered all the living which walk under the sun with a second child that shall stand up in his stead. There is no end of all the people, even of all that have been before them. They also that come after shall not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and vexation of spirit. What's he saying in these two verses? Well, I think Solomon has finally come to the conclusion here that his reign is not going to last forever. I think Solomon understands that he's probably coming down to the end of his reign, and he knew it was going to end someday. But the 40 years that he reigned, and I don't know where he is in his reign here. Maybe he's in his 39th year. Maybe he's at the beginning of the 40th year. Maybe he knows that his reign is coming to an end, and he's looking back on it and think, how many years did I rule Israel that I did not have a right relationship with him? And Solomon kind of says that there's going to come some that's not going to rejoice in him at all. And Solomon's trying to tell us, look, there's going to be a day when the wisest king that ever reigned in Israel is going to be off the scene, and people are going to forget me. And I think Solomon was concerned about that. I think he was concerned about his legacy. And it was almost like the king of Egypt, or the king of Egypt after Joseph had been gone. Remember, there was that king that rose up that knew not Joseph. And how sad a day was that. And how did Solomon end up? He said, surely this also is vanity and vexation of spirit. Derek Kinder, a Bible scholar, said of verse 16, he said, Solomon had reached a pinnacle of human glory only to be stranded there. It is yet another of our human anticlimaxes that ultimately empty achievements. I'm going to read that to you again. He said Solomon reached the pinnacle of human glory only to be stranded there. That's where his mind was. And he said, it is yet another of our human anticlimaxes and ultimately empty achievements. Solomon is looking back, and all of the achievements that he had made, they're all empty. Because he did them apart from God. How would have Solomon ended up if he hadn't have gone to god Molech? Have you ever studied who the god Molech is and what they did? They would take babies and sacrifice them to the god Molech. And they'd hollow out a brass or some kind of metal oxen or something, and they'd build a fire under it. And then they'd take a newborn baby or a young baby and put it in the middle of that calf and burn that baby to death. And that's what Solomon resorted to, because his wives turned his heart away from God. Ultimately, empty achievements. And just remember, the book of Ecclesiastes is about man's philosophy apart from God. And this is what we'll end up with if we choose to have a life apart from God. You say, well, I thought the study of Ecclesiastes was going to be kind of an encouraging book to preach from, and we could leave out of here feeling good. Well, just know that that's what we will get if we live our life without God. I don't think that's a life worth living apart from God. And the farther away from God we are, it's easy not to think of eternity. We just live our life without thinking about eternity. And when we don't think about eternity, it becomes easier to grieve the Lord. Kind of remember that from this morning? And eventually it will be easy to quench the Spirit of God. Because of what Solomon said, you know, I'm an old foolish king. I can't be admonished anymore. God cannot turn my heart anymore. What a sad commentary for the smartest man on the face of the earth. But just remember, God can give you all the wisdom in the world, but if you decide to depart from Him, it's just going to be vanity of vanities, and all is vanity. So there is great proof that it is much better to serve God and keep Him first place in our lives. That's what I want to strive to do. Because I don't want to die an old, washed up, miserable individual. I don't. I hope you don't either. Well, I'm young. So was Solomon. Reigned for 40 years. You know, when he got to the end of 40 years, you know what I'm sure he said? Boy, that kind of went by pretty quick. I'm 66 years old. And Brother Melvin, I don't know where time went. And Brother Wayne says, I'm 75. Can you? I know. I'll be, if the Lord tarries, it won't be long till I'm 75. But I'd rather go out at 75 being in love with my Savior than dying to death like he did, because it was miserable. So I guess if I had a title of the message tonight, it'd be this: don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. Let's stand. Father, thank you for